But Clinton is not just sitting on the sidelines. Today, she secured an endorsement from the political arm of the Congressional Black Caucus, which held an event at DNC headquarters to laud the candidate.
When I look at the issues that matter most to the African-American community, from health care to education, from crime and violence in our communities, there's only one candidate that stands shoulders above the others. And her name is Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Civil rights icon John Lewis, a longtime Clinton loyalist who backed Hillary Clinton in 2008 before eventually switching to Barack Obama, unloaded on Sanders at the endorsement event, casting him as absent from the civil rights fight.
I never saw him. I never met him. I would chair the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee for 3 years, from 1963 to 1966. I was involved in the sit-ins, the Freedom Ride, the March on Washington, the March from Selma to Montgomery. But I met Hillary Clinton. I met President Clinton.
But not all members of the CBC agree with today's endorsement. Joining me now, Democratic Representative Keith Ellison of Minnesota, who's a member of the Congressional Black Caucus and who is supporting Bernie Sanders. Congressman, take me through, first of all, just describe for folks what the Congressional Black Caucus PAC is and how it is distinct from the entity of the caucus itself, which is the African-American members of the United States Congress.
Well, it's about 20 members. There's about 11 of them that are lobbyists. 2 of them are staff, and the remainder are members of the members of the Black Caucus. They operate separately. We don't discuss their business in our CBC meetings, which we have every Wednesday. And they made this decision, as I understand it, on the day that they made it. Several members, one member was absent, others abstained, yet the majority came up with this endorsement.
You mentioned
so that's what it is.
Yeah, you mentioned that some of them were lobbyists. Do you think that plays a role here?
You know, who knows? All I can tell you is that I think that Bernie Sanders is the right choice for African-American voters. He's the right choice for all voters, and he has an excellent history of advancing the cause of racial justice. I mean, you know, Bernie Sanders and I are co-authors of the bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. If that were to happen, and there is a growing and very strong movement to do it, as many as 54% of African Americans would get a dramatic raise. You know, his proposals on tuition and debt-free college. You would see as many as 1.2 million black college students be able to save $36,000. I mean, he's done a lot. My son is a black soldier. I don't want to see another Iraq war debacle. He voted no on Iraq, and I want a president who's going to be standing there like that. So there are some specific things that I believe make him the right choice.
Let me ask you this. This is something that has been said to me now off the record by several elected Democratic members of Congress. A senator said this to me over the weekend. Basically, they said, look, you know, we served with Bernie, and Claire McCaskill said this out loud. How come no Democratic colleagues of Bernie Sanders have endorsed him in the Senate? When you look at the House, it's overwhelming endorsements to Hillary Clinton. I believe it's you and Raul Grijalva, another congressman in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who have endorsed Bernie Sanders. They say, look, trust the people that have worked with him who are making the choice to endorse Hillary Clinton over him. What do you say? What's your response to that?
Well, I guess my response is, well, what about the 3 million people who have endorsed him by sending him at least, you know, the average of $27? I mean, this is historic and phenomenal. What about the fact that he was supposed to be completely blown out in Iowa, ties that race and blows her out in New Hampshire? These guys are worrying about the wrong endorsers. The endorsers are the primary voters in New Hampshire, and they are the caucus goers in Iowa. And I predict things are really going to change in these upcoming contests, because when Bernie talks, the people hear his message, and it is electrifying and very attractive to all voters, and I think it'll benefit black voters in particular. There's a reason Harry Belafonte is in. There's a reason Ben Jealous is in. The reason I am. There's a reason many others are, and I think black voters are going to catch on.
All right, Representative Keith Ellison, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Joining me now, Democratic Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York. He's a member of the Congressional Black Caucus and a supporter of Hillary Clinton. Congressman, how much of this is about, whenever I look at endorsements in any political party at any time, you always got to remember that a huge part of that is people making a determination about who's going to win, right? I mean, how much of all of this is people imagining that in the end it's going to be Hillary Clinton who will be the Democratic nominee.
Well, I think electability is always an important consideration, but it's electability in the context of who in this particular election can defeat the Republican attack machine, replace Barack Obama, build upon the progress that he has made as president, and keep the country moving forward. And in the context of the very big problems that we've had, and Bernie Sanders, to his credit, has done a good job of articulating the notion of the need for a political revolution based on these big problems, a rigged economy, higher education affordability. I would add a criminal justice reform crisis that is necessary for us to address, as well as, you know, the need to deal with the gun violence epidemic. These are big problems. It requires big solutions. And in the context of who actually can defeat the Republicans to assume the presidency and move the country forward, I think it's reasonable for many of us to conclude that that's Hillary Clinton. She has the track record and the experience. It's clear to me that she's ready, willing, and able to assume the presidency on day one and move us forward.
Are there things particularly in the Clinton record that stand out to you in terms of African-American voters in particular, or even not just African-American voters? You represent a diverse group of constituents in my home borough. Are there issues there that you see concretely in her record that you think augur well for a Clinton presidency?
Absolutely. I think when you start at the beginning of her career as a young lawyer with the Children's Defense Fund, where she was fighting against the prison industrial complex in the early 1970s, trying to deal with the issue of teenage people being incarcerated in adult facilities down south and being successful. And then during her time in Arkansas, where she started a very impressive civil legal services organization that provided representation and assistance to poor folks down in Arkansas, many of whom were African Americans, of course. When you look at her time here in Washington, D.C. during the 1990s, she was significantly responsible for the passage of the Children's Health Insurance Program, which essentially, Chris, is the bridge between Medicare in 1965 and the Affordable Care Act in 2010. That was a Hillary Clinton initiative that she helped get over the top. And then, of course, as it relates to her time in the United States Senate from New York, co-sponsored legislation prohibiting racial profiling, co-sponsored legislation that dealt with sentencing reform, helped to support the issue of trying to correct the disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine that eventually was passed into law when she was part of the Obama administration. There's a consistency of work on issues of importance to the African-American community that I think stands out.
Let me identify one place that people have put a lot of emphasis, and that's, of course, the years of her husband's presidency. And it's unclear, even to me, the degree to which this can be hung on Hillary Clinton, frankly. I think it's a debatable point. But people do point out that it was Bill Clinton who signed the crime bill, which was a popular bill. Bernie Sanders voted for the bill, half the Congressional Black Caucus, but was a main exacerbator of mass incarceration in this country. Of course, welfare reform also, which was passed with highly racially coded language, which has in many instances proven to be terrible for a lot of particularly women of color in this country. What do you think of that part of the record?
Well, outside of her work on health care, it's not clear to me that you can hang around her neck anything that related to her husband's administration, because if you go back and look at the 1990s, health care was the one issue where she took the lead. But let's unpack the Clinton record. As you point out, Chris, the 1994 crime bill, which did increase the incarceration of Americans, disproportionately African-American. At the time when it was signed, it was about 800,000 plus. Now we've got 2.3 million. That's a problem. Democrats and Republicans made a mistake. Bernie Sanders made a mistake by voting for the 1994 crime bill, so I think we can take that off the table. When you look at the economic record during the Clinton administration, 20 million plus jobs that were created, one of the lowest poverty rates for African Americans in recorded history, one of the highest employment rates that took place during an 8-year administration occurred for African Americans. If we want to criticize her for what happened with the 1994 crime bill, shouldn't she also be given credit for being a partner in the economy that benefited African Americans during that same period of time?
All right, Representative Hakeem Jeffries, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, the next state on the Democratic primary calendar, even before South Carolina, is Nevada, which holds its Democratic caucuses on February 20th, 9 days from now. The last poll in the state showed Clinton with a 23-point lead over Sanders, 50-27. But that poll was taken back in December, and a whole heck of a lot has changed since then, including a $1 million Sanders ad buy in the state. Nevada marks Clinton's first chance to right the ship after being trounced in New Hampshire. But Clinton spokesman Brian Fallon doesn't want expectations to get out of hand.
The Washington Post had a smart item today that talked about, that there's reasons to believe that Senator Sanders should fare well in a state like Nevada. There's an important Hispanic element to the Democratic caucus-goer universe in Nevada, but it's still a state that is 80% white voters. You have a caucus-style format, and he'll have the momentum coming out of New Hampshire, presumably.
Joining me now, MSNBC political analyst John Ralston. He's a political reporter and host of Ralston Live, which airs on PBS in Nevada. John, you have not been shy about what you think of the Clinton campaign advancing an argument that Nevada is essentially and fundamentally in the same category of Iowa and New Hampshire as the kind of state Sanders should do well in. What do you think of that argument?
Chris, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but I think you asked me about the Clinton campaign making these ludicrous claims that it's 80% white out here, which you and everybody else knows is not true. In fact, the people making these claims know it's not true. Robbie Mook, the campaign manager for the Clinton campaign, worked out here in 2008. The electorate here, the Democratic caucus electorate, was 30% plus minority in 2008, is likely to be 40% plus. But this is just evidence of the Clinton campaign essentially coming out of New Hampshire and trying to lower expectations, but in such a way that it's not credible. They clearly are worried. They had all the infrastructure set up here. They were the dominant campaign here, but now they're feeling the burn, as it were. And Sanders is all over TV here. He's got 3 ads running now. He's doubled her in spending. They have real activity on the ground for the first time. And so I think they're going with this outlandish claim of an 80% white electorate, which even Harry Reid, the Senate minority leader, criticized them for today for saying. And so I think that they're worried about what's happening in Nevada, even though I think they still have an advantage.
It's interesting. I covered the Nevada caucuses back in 2008. Hillary Clinton won that over Barack Obama. At that time, Obama was seen as having a weakness among Latino voters. He was polling behind her in that respect. What do you think the terrain looks like? We haven't polled there since December, so your guess is as good as anyone's about what the actual state of the race looks like there.
Well, again, I'm sorry I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Chris, but as far as what the terrain is here and the Latino vote is here, which I think is what you asked about, and I apologize if it wasn't, but the Latino vote was about 15% of the turnout in 2008 in the caucus. It's likely to be the same or greater this time, but there's been a pitched battle here between the Sanders and Clinton campaigns. Clinton campaign reached out to the Hispanic vote here. They hired a couple of Hispanic operatives who worked in the field here in 2008. They had Hillary Clinton come out, you remember, in last May, met with Dreamers, talked about going to the left of Obama. You think his executive orders are good? Mine will be even better. Those Dreamers just endorsed her a couple of weeks ago. But now Sanders has set up a Latino steering committee himself, and suddenly a member of that steering committee defected to the Hillary Clinton campaign. They released emails showing that she actually was committed to Sanders. It's getting really nasty to the point where you can tell that there's real tension, especially in the Clinton side, that Sanders is making some kinds of inroads into the Latino community. It doesn't make much sense yet, Chris. We don't have good polling data out here, as you know, so it's difficult to have that kind of empirical data. But I think that the Clinton folks are worried that the Sanders people are making inroads, especially because the Culinary Union, which is the turnout operation for Latino voters in Nevada, is essentially being a wallflower. And I bet there's a tremendous amount of pressure coming down on the Culinary Union to take its place on the dance floor, as it were.
All right, John Ralston, thank you for that. I don't know what it says about the predictability of my questions that you were able to divine both of them with audio trouble, but thanks for hanging in there. All right.